Hey everyone, welcome to the Healthy Team Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Erickson, and this is the show where we dive into the real stories behind thriving workplace cultures, exploring everything from wellness and morale to leadership and productivity. Today on the Healthy Team Podcast, I'm thrilled to be joined by Lee Stroud, Principal and President of Newmeasures. Lee and her team are industrial and organizational psychologists who help companies really listen to employees through thoughtful surveys and reporting. Their work turns feedback into practical insights that help improve employee experiences and organizational results. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
Well, Lee, let's kick things off by having you tell us a little bit about your business and the kind of work that you and your team do at Newmeasures.
Absolutely. So at Newmeasures, as you said, we're a boutique firm of industrial organizational psychologists. We specialize in employee feedback surveys and are really passionate about helping create dialogues between managers and their employees so that managers can make great decisions that impact the business. We work really across survey platforms. We are a tech agnostic company, and we believe in human-led, tech-enabled solutions for our clients. So really helping make sure that they're measuring what's important to not only the business, but employees, and are fully prepared to act on it, that they can actually drive meaningful change through that listening. We do this across the employee life cycle. So we support from onboarding surveys, the new hire 5, 30, 90-day touch base, as well as exit surveys, and really anything in between. When you think about the moments that matter for employees, we want to make sure that they have a voice and they can share that feedback with their employers in a way that's meaningful for everyone.
Awesome. Well, I love that, moments that matter. Could you share a little bit more with us about what the moments that matter might look like for maybe a smaller to medium-sized organization or even a team?
Absolutely. And I think our definition of this maybe has evolved over time. It used to be we would think of moments that matter when you're first onboarded in an organization, maybe your anniversary date. And certainly through COVID, I think we've really brought our whole selves to the workplace. And so the moments that matter can be a lot more personal. When you think about as an employer, you have these different opportunities throughout an employee's journey to really capture the hearts and minds of your employees. And those are the opportunities to really drive retention in your organization. And so now it might be when someone returns from parental leave and do they feel supported? It might be if they're caring for a loved one. Certainly through COVID, we experienced all kinds of new moments that matter. And what was interesting is we saw engagement really, tick up in COVID because organizations were reaching out to employees in a very personal and meaningful way. We've seen a little bit of a trend of, back to business as usual. And so we want to make sure that people are still leaning into all of the opportunities in employees' life that impact how they might show up at work and know that there's someone there who really cares about them as a person.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it sounds like some of the moments that matter are going to be relatively uniform for new hires, exit surveys, things like that.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like many of the moments that matter could be very personal, and maybe that would be something that just their team leader or hiring manager would be aware of. So it sounds like everybody really needs to be involved in order for this to work.
Absolutely. And that's why we try to find a nice balance between both formal and informal listening opportunities. So certainly where that's standardized, putting in a formal listening practice where we have things like automated onboarding surveys, automated anniversary surveys. The annual engagement survey is still typically the foundation of any strategic listening program. And also equipping leaders to really be able to facilitate meaningful conversation. If someone is taking a week from off from work for a vacation, to be able to, have them share those experiences and those stories with the team. As a small example, we had two teammates just recently who are both traveling abroad and really carving out space in our team meeting for them to be able to share those experiences and what was so important and meaningful to them.
Wow, that's cool. Lee, what first drew you to the work of employee listening, and why do you think it matters more than ever today?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I've been drawn to the field of IO psychology since undergrad, and really, appreciating being able to apply psychological principles to the workplace. It's where we spend so much of our life, and to be able to help create healthy work environments for people to thrive. In my own career, I've certainly experienced very toxic work environments, and it's something that I'm really personally passionate about, is creating a space where people can thrive, because I believe that it doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. I think employees and organizations can both thrive. I do think that's the challenge that we face right now, is really driving that message home with senior leaders. Right now, we're seeing a lot of our clients pivot. They're trying to figure out this new economic landscape, the new technical landscape. How is AI going to impact our businesses? And we see a lot of our clients going through a big transformation. And what we tend to see as the trend is organizations want to pull back from listening, and they don't want to lean into it. And it's creating a lot of stress, a lot of chaos, a lot of change. And employees feel a little bit like they're left hanging out there. We know that if, instead of pulling back, organizations can really lean into that, they're much more likely to go through that transition with better innovation, better insight, better change management and communication, and ultimately better retention. They're going to have employees that really buy into where the organization is going and are more committed to the success of the organization when they feel heard, when they feel part of the solution, and they feel that somebody cares about their own personal experience through that. I think employees are very resilient, but they want to know that somebody cares about what they're going through. And so, again, we tend to see that the opposite reaction from clients as they want to pull back, and we really want to encourage people to lean in. And ultimately, it does save the organization money. I know when we're all tightening the purse strings, it's difficult to want to carve out budget for employee listening opportunities. And we've seen it time and time again. Employees can help you figure out how to do more with less. They can be more committed and really give it their all when they feel that somebody cares and they're involved in the solution.
I love that. So when Lee, when organizations say they want to listen to employees, what do you think that they most often get wrong, or maybe even completely miss?
This is a juicy one. I think that the two biggest things that we see, one is it's a check the box activity. We're supposed to do an annual engagement survey. So check, we've done it. And now HR can go figure out what to do with the information. When we don't have good buy-in from the top and buy-in to really drive business decisions with this feedback, it will never be more than an annual activity that's owned by HR. The follow-on to that is that we see people treat actioning for surveys as a separate activity. And we are really trying to help leaders learn to action on the business and use this data to inform how they are getting their work done. So when we can make that strategic connection, so what are my business priorities? What do I need to get done in the next 6 to 12 months? And how does this feedback from my employees tell me something about, as a leader, how I'm going to get that done, how I can be more effective, how I can be more efficient, how I can bring them along in the process? When we can do that really well, that's when we can really increase the frequency and cadence with which we're listening, because it's no longer an activity that's owned by HR, and instead leaders see HR as empowering them to be more effective and more efficient as leaders. I don't mean to oversimplify, because it's certainly not something that's easy to do. And again, it really comes down to helping leaders really understand how to drive meaningful conversations within their team and connect the survey results to their business priorities.
Lee, could you maybe share a story where employee feedback uncovered something surprising that made a big difference or had a significant impact for the company?
I'll share a couple just interesting ones that fall outside of how we typically think about employee engagement. One story that I like was a healthcare organization, and while we were measuring engagement, when they really mined the unstructured feedback or the open comments, they realized that people were really struggling with the commute. The healthcare facility was located near a military base, and their shifts were aligned when people were trying to enter and exit the base, and traffic was backed up. Now, is the commute correlated with engagement? No. Can it impact intent to stay? It absolutely can, because it is one of those hygiene factors. So while we weren't necessarily measuring it on the survey, because we were mining those unstructured comments, we were able to uncover that if they could just offset the shifts, they could significantly reduce the commute time for their staff. And again, that's going to have a big impact on retention, which we know in healthcare is a really big issue right now, as there is a shortage of healthcare providers and employees. So that's one of the things I'm most excited, I think, about how AI is going to impact how we're listening, because we can now use both quantitative and qualitative data in a richer way than we used to, which helps us learn what we're not listening for, what we don't know we need to listen for, and really uncover the things that could have an impact. In my own team, and we have a small team, 14 of us, and we do our own survey, and we do a well-being survey. And through that process and that feedback, we learned that our employees were really scheduling back-to-back calls all through the week. And what that meant is at the end of the week, they didn't feel caught up on their work. It was bleeding into the weekend. They had the Sunday scaries where they were really stressed about going into Monday and if they'd gotten everything done. And so through that feedback, we implemented low to no meeting Fridays, giving them the permission to block their calendar so that they have Friday to catch up on the work of the week, to prepare for the week ahead and be able to go into the week well rested, and or to the weekend well rested, and feel like they aren't eating into their personal time. And it's had a significant impact on the health and well-being of our team and their ability to handle stress and chaos and the workload when needed. So just two, I think, that people can relate to in terms of some of the things we don't know that we need to be listening for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super relatable. And did you discover that also through kind of an open-ended survey question?
That was really based on the follow-up conversation based on the quantitative data. So that is something that we really try to instill in our clients. It's easy when you get the data back to think you know what's driving it and to think that you know how to solve for it. And we want to make sure that we're not circumventing the process of having a follow-up conversation and ask what's really meaningful to employees. So that was a suggestion that came from our team, and something that as a small business owner seemed like a great perk and something that we could implement that didn't cost the business as a benefit and had a significant impact on the team.
Love that. So, what are the most common roadblocks that organizations face when they're trying to improve engagement or employee listening? Is it that just the gain buy-in from the top executives, or they just don't get it, or what are the biggest challenges, Lee?
It certainly can be buy-in from the top. Again, I think the common perception in organizations is that HR owns engagement, and really we're all responsible for engagement. That can certainly be part of it. Lack of ongoing accountability is a big part of that, and we've really been trying to help our clients work in the action follow-up into their normal business processes, and to create more formal opportunities for accountability. If that is a follow-up pulse on assessing whether or not people have seen change from the survey results, that's certainly a big part of it. And then really, again, I think it's that piece of connecting the survey results to the work that's already being done. When it feels like we're giving people more to do, managers are less likely to adopt the feedback. They might talk about it for a little while, and then they put the feedback in a drawer and go about getting busy with the real work. And that tends to be a default, way of thinking for our frontline leaders, because we know they've got a lot going on. I think ever since COVID, we've been asking more and more of our leaders. And so I think they can feel overwhelmed when they're not equipped with the skills and the training to really be able to facilitate these conversations and facilitate the connection from the survey feedback to their business priorities.
So, how much time would it take for an organization to implement a program like what your company offers?
Well, sometimes I joke it's like turning the Titanic. So again, I don't want to oversimplify. We are talking about culture change ultimately and creating a culture of feedback. How quickly that can be done really depends on the organization and their accepted pace of change and what they're willing to invest in. We do like to work with our clients to identify a strategic approach to listening and really identify a clear roadmap over 2 to even 3 years of what it would take to implement that. So many of our clients are still doing the annual engagement survey, and that's where they are today. And that's great because they're listening. And we want to make sure that we continue to build on that and we can create more meaningful touch points. Also, engagement isn't the only key metric around the employee experience that we need to be taking a look at. And so if we can build in some of these other touch points, we can have a more well-rounded view of the employee experience. But again, we want to make sure we're doing so in a way that the organization can adopt. We often can see technology lead the listening strategy, and that's not what we want to do. And I think people are going to be tempted now, especially as AI is making it easier again to listen in new ways, to once again have tech lead the solution. We saw this when we were really getting into online feedback, and everybody wanted to do quarterly pulses because it became so easy to do that. But they hadn't equipped their leaders to act on the data in a meaningful way. And so most of those programs failed, and the organization started to pull back from that process. People weren't seeing change from their feedback, so they lost interest in taking the survey. So there's a tension to be managed there in terms of how quickly we build these programs and making sure the organization's really ready to act on it in a way that everybody can embrace.
So, like with all things AI, it could be a great thing or it can be damaging depending upon how it's deployed and how thoughtfully it's implemented.
Absolutely. And, I think what we want to be really careful with AI is, we're of the strong opinion that technology is not going to solve your people problems. And we're always looking for the next, slick tech thing that's going to solve our people problems. And again, that's why we always want to be, human led and tech enabled. So let's, create a strategy and then we align the technology to support it. We cannot take out the human component of driving a, compelling employee experience.
Is that something that your company does, or something that the customer does once they get this data, this quantitative and qualitative data? How do they know what to do with it for a new customer?
Mm-hmm. So we absolutely do help them with that. It starts again from making sure they're measuring the right things. So we want to make sure that the survey itself is very much aligned with the organization's strategy. Different organizations are going through different things. Different industries need to measure different things. Obviously, in heavy manufacturing, safety is a big component. In professional services, it's not. I mentioned we have clients who are going through big transformation. And so we really need to make sure we're assessing change communication and how well that's going as some examples. And then capturing the data, of course, and then rolling out the results through the organization. Even making those decisions can be challenging for groups. Do we roll it out through the entire organization? What are we expecting our leaders to do? So we want to be very thoughtful and intentional about how we do that, and making sure that we're keeping people focused on the right things. So we do analyze the data with our clients help them tell the story and what it means for their organization, and help them get focused on taking action as a result.
And is the end goal most typically, Lee, for your customers, is it principally employee retention? Are you sometimes seeing boosts in productivity as a result of getting and interpreting all this information from the employee listening?
All of the above. So engagement is one precursor to a lot of other business metrics that are important to our clients. Certainly retention can be a big one. Depending on industry, a lot of our clients are really struggling with retention. And so that's something that we focus in on. We might be looking at productivity. We might be looking at safety incidents, performance levels, sales, whatever types of business metrics or outcomes our clients are paying attention to or important to them, we can link that back to the employee experience. And is important is making sure we're looking at the statistical connection. So we can make inferences like how well an organization is setting expectations for career growth in the first 90 days is an actual driver of turnover or retention. So those are the kinds of insights that we want to uncover for our clients, because again, how they're impacting the employee experience has a direct impact on business performance. So whatever's important to the client, we can connect it back to the employee experience.
So Lee, and with all your experience, what do you think is the single most overlooked factor in creating exceptional employee experiences?
Ooh.
Kind of a tough one.
I don't know if we have enough time to dig into that one today. I don't know if there isn't something that's overlooked, but maybe some of the things that are the biggest challenges, and maybe even like relative to sort of today's environment. Communication, I think, is it's just a human challenge, right? Whether it's between, an employee and his or her supervisor, or senior leaders and frontline employees, or, friends and family, communication is just a human challenge. And so I know that can be a point of frustration in organizations. So really continuing to figure out how we can communicate more effectively, I think, is really, an underlying factor in a lot of what we see in the employee feedback. We also tend to see, some pendulum shifts in how employers in general are treating the employee experience. I mentioned what we saw in COVID, and it was pretty universal and it was pretty powerful. I mean, think about it. I've worked remotely for 15 years. I never had to turn on my camera until COVID hit, which is really unfortunate when I built my office into my kitchen, and now my background is my ovens, because that was before we turned cameras on. And so I think, COVID really humanized the work environment and the work experience. It changed how we could show up. When you were working from home pre-COVID, you never wanted a dog to bark or, a child to cry in the background. And now I think we really embrace that part of the experience. And I think the difficulty now, we're seeing the pendulum shift again, where we were all pro remote work and flexible work and hybrid work. We're seeing this swing the other direction to, you have to be in the office, I have to see you, or I don't believe that you're working. And I just think that is a flawed assumption. I do believe that in-person interaction is important. It's important to building healthy teams, and it's important to collaboration and innovation. I do think you can do a lot of that remotely if done intentionally. And I think it's a flawed assumption to think that people can't be productive if you can't see them working. It does require clear expectations, clear accountability, clear performance standards, and feedback on performance. And it can be done really well. So that is something that I see happening today that my hope is will maybe swing back to the middle a little bit. It's certainly not a one-size-fits-all approach. We're a completely virtual organization, and we certainly try to make time for in-person interaction as much as we can, in addition to our virtual ways of interacting. And I would like to see this trust in employees come back. Where, if I'm setting clear expectations and performance standards and parameters, that I trust you to do your job.
Yeah, personally, I agree with you, and I think that I think a lot of employees that are working remotely, um, they may work, many more hours at atypical times.
Mhm.
And anyways, and I think that they really appreciate the freedom and flexibility. And I think for the most part, it was a good experiment. And I agree, it's kind of sad to see it going away, but hopefully you're right, and it'll come back to the middle somewhere. Lee, if a leader could do one thing tomorrow to start listening better to their team, what would you recommend?
I'm going to recommend something that we've started doing with our team, which is having a conversation about what our team values most, and you know what they want for their life. So I think so often we try to segment our work life and our professional life. And I think that's just really challenging to do. And we really try hard to create an environment where people can show up as their whole selves. And the feedback from our team has been really positive. They really appreciate these conversations because, number one, I think they feel seen as a whole person because we're interested in what their hopes and dreams and goals are. And some of them are work related and some of them are personal. And some of them are things that we can help support with. One thing that we heard overwhelming from our team is that, number one, they love the flexibility of our work environment. And we have a team of very well-traveled people. They are adventurers. They love to go and do. And so as a small business, benefits can be challenging and pricey. And so one of the changes we made was we switched to unlimited PTO this year. And, again, the feedback to that has been so extremely positive, and people really feel it's given them permission to take that week-long vacation. They could have done it before, and there was just a shift that now they just really felt empowered to go and do it. And that was really a result of having these one-on-one, what do you want for your life? And so now I think we've got people that before might have considered, moving away from the organization in a shorter period of time, I think really can see how they can accomplish their life goals while here.
That makes so much more sense. And I think you've created a wonderful work environment. I'm sure that your employees really appreciate being part of a team that truly cares,
I
and
do hope
or a
so.
company that really cares about them.
Well, they're a fantastic team, and everybody really does show up and give their all. And so, as a leadership team, we just want to make sure that they know how much they're appreciated and valued, and giving them the safe space to, be completely who they are.
Love it. Lee, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you again, Lee Stroud, for joining us and sharing your insights on building healthy teams. And before we wrap up, could you let our listeners know where they could find you and learn more about New Measures?
Absolutely. Well, certainly our website at newmeasures.com. We're also on LinkedIn. Anyone is welcome to email me, Lee, at newmeasures.com. I'd love to have a conversation. So hope everybody will reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee, for your time today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into the Healthy Teams podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with your team or anybody who's passionate about great workplace culture. We'll be back soon with more great conversations to help you build stronger and healthier teams. Until next time, stay well and lead well. Thank you.
Thanks so much.